Hi, welcome back. It's been a while. You know why? Because this video has just been sitting on my computer, chilling. So I made this jacket, and here in the first clip you can see me cutting out the wrong pattern piece. But it was okay, I ended up having enough fabric, thank God. And I cut out the right kind of sleeve, and I also made it bigger at the end of the sleeve so I could make some pleats in it at the end. Here are all my pattern pieces, one back, two fronts and two sleeves. I'm also gonna need a collar and I'm gonna do a waistband as well. I got started by sewing both shoulder seams together and then inserting the sleeves. I did that while the side seams were still open because I wasn't sure if the pieces would fit perfectly. As you can see, the sleeves are a little too wide for my bodice piece, but it doesn't matter if you do it this way. So I sewed along the sleeve curves of each sleeve. And then I folded the jacket inside out and I pinned along the arm and the side seam of the bodice. And I sewed that all at once and simply cut off the excess. Excess? I also tried it on and marked where I needed my neck hole to be, and I cut that out. And here I am trying to see if I'll have enough for my button placket. And this is a collar pattern that I had copied from an existing denim jacket that I had, and it fit pretty well. I just made sure that the circumference of the neck hole would match the size of the collar. I also cut out some interfacing and ironed it on to one side of the collar. And then I pinned them together, right sides together. And I sewed along the top and the sides of the collar piece. And then I cut slits into the rounded pieces, the rounded seams, so that it would turn around nicely and have flat laying seam. And I also decided to add interfacing to the button plackets. That just makes the buttonholes very stable and gives it some structure. Then I folded that inwards and sewed along both sides of the button placket, on the inside and on the outside. I didn't really need to do that, you can barely see the stitch, but I don't know, I just did it. And here I am, seeing if the collar is the exact same width of my neck hole, and it is. I got lucky. And here I am just thinking of top stitching it, but I figured out the best way would be to sew it on like you would a biased tape. So I flipped open the seam allowance of the collar, pinned it together, and firstly sewed one side down. And then I flipped the entire collar to the inside of the jacket, like you can see me doing here. And then I tucked in all the raw edges and decided to do a stitch in the ditch method, which you can look that up somewhere else. It's not the best tutorial here. I'm just showing you how I did it, and it worked out fine. First I pinned it from this side, but then I realized that I should pin it from the other side because I'm gonna be sewing in the ditch, so I need to be sewing from the other side. So I put the pins along there. Takes a little bit of finessing, but you can do it. And so the collar was on. You can see me here trying it on. And I found that it fit really well, but I found that the connection between those, yes, where I'm pointing, was a little bit floppy. So I just sewed it together with a few stitches by hand. And here I'm also considering that the jacket is pretty damn wide. So I decided to take in the side seams a little bit, and I'm just eyeballing that and sewing that down and cutting down the seam allowance. Here I am cutting the waistband. I wanted it to be horizontal because the whole jacket was vertical, and I'm also cutting out the sleeve cuffs. I'm also cutting out the sleeve cuffs, and then I'm folding in both sides, 1 little centimeter, and then I'm folding it in half, so I have a nice way to do it. And then I had to figure out how wide I needed the sleeves to be, the cuffs, and I sewed that down so they were like a loop. Here I am cutting my jacket to the right length, and I'm also sewing down the waistband, or the band of the jacket at the bottom, the same way that I sewed on the collar with the stitch in a ditch method. Like a bias tape. Not exactly like a bias tape, but kind of. And then I decided to make these pleats in the sleeves because I wanted them to be a little bit puffy. And so I just sewed those down before I added the cuffs, so I wouldn't have so many pins. And as you can see, it's pretty tight already under my sewing machine, because the sleeve cuff didn't fit around the little thingy. And so I did decide to hand stitch the rest of this. So you can see the cuff, it's still open, and I'm gonna fold it to the inside of the sleeve. And then I'm gonna sew in this seam that I did just now and make sure it's all secure on the inside. And it doesn't even have to be pretty, because nobody's gonna look inside of your sleeve cuff anyway. Here I am doing that and also playing Animal Crossing. I think it was still Sakura season, so I tried to get some of those DIYs. And here I am measuring and marking where the buttons are gonna go. If you make buttons, always try out the buttonhole on your fabric to see if it works, if you have the size down. I have a video on how I do buttonholes without a buttonhole foot for my machine. I'll link it in the card. I also stitched on a pocket and I sewed the buttons on. Well, my mom did. I also finished all the raw seams before adding the waistband with a biased tape so that it would not be raw seams. And here it is. Beautiful, wonderful. I decided to only put on one pocket because when I sewed it on it was already crooked and I didn't feel like opening it up, so I just left it at one and dealt with it. Here's a little cute peacock that I encountered on my little walk. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I would love it if you subscribed. Tell me what you thought of it below. Do you think it came out good? I've been wearing it for a while already, and I do really like it. Goodbye! Sundress, Calgary.